Bede said that the most beloved goddess of the English, so the English were not Celtic, they were invaders who came in when the Roman Empire was collapsing. And the Romans couldn't fend off the barbarians anymore, and the English came from Scandinavia, and so from Denmark and from parts of northern Germany and what's now the country of Holland, and they invaded and they established their own part of the country, and so they brought their own gods with them. And their most favorite god that they had with them at the time was a spring sun goddess called Easter. And the monk, Christian monk Bede, or Beda, writing around the year 790 or so, said that was their most beloved goddess. And she had games involving, her festival had games involving eggs, like throwing eggs and hiding eggs and hunting for eggs and Easter bunnies and all the sort of things we associate with Easter.
This is from where?
Northern Europe, but specifically the British Islands in this case.
Okay. And then what?
Well, and then from what he said, specifically, there was a ceremony where you would plant the first furrow. The English people celebrating their goddess Easter festival at Easter, what would be the day of Easter, at least, yeah, so on a Sunday, following the full moon, that follows the spring equinox, exactly when the Christian Easter is, they would throw bread and milk and beer along with the seed in the first furrow. And then they would face the east and they would call out to Eartha, the mother of Easter. So, Eartha, Eartha, Eartha. They would call out 3 times, and at dawn, even, I suppose.
Are you recording?
Yeah.
For Easter to arise. And she would arise and they would say, our sacrifice has worked. Easter has arisen. And so, so that's what we did at these Easter festivals. I mean, that was the main thing, and it was it's an actual historical thing. You would throw in bread from the previous year.
Eartha? Who's Eartha?
Eartha is the earth goddess, and she's the mother of Easter, the sun goddess.
From the English island?
She's generally Germanic.
Oh, she's Germanic?
Yeah, but the English are a nation of people who originally came from the mainland of Europe at the end of the Roman Empire, and they oppressed the Celts, right? The Celts were Romanized, but they had older gods, some of them, but they were Christians. And the English were pagans, and they broke into the Roman Empire, into England and Scotland, and established their own English-speaking 2 countries. And this was their gods and their mythology, which, I mean, they had other gods, like their version of Thor and their version. They had a Woden, who's Odin, obviously, and they had Freya and Frigga, and so all their gods were the same gods, but Easter was a special god that they seemed to.
You have a statue of Freya, right?
I do. A wooden one. A wooden carved statue, yeah. Small one. Statuette. Yeah. Along with Frey, who's the brother. So Frey's the brother of Freya. They're twins, and they're incestuous lovers of the gods.
Uh-oh.
What can you say?
Horrible.
The gods. Yeah, I mean, who's gonna tell them what to do?
Who's gonna care?
Who's gonna tell them what to do?
Oh, all right. And so you have a celebration on Easter, right, Mark?
I used to, before coronavirus, yes.
And, a group of friends comes here to the to the house, and we parade around the garden, right?
Yes, we carry a figurine of the goddess Easter who has a home in my house in a shrine, and she comes out once a year to be carried around the garden and then to oversee the ceremonies and to see the Easter egg Olympics and the awarding of Easter bunny prizes and stuff.
And that's Easter. What is the name?
Yeah, the things that we associate with Easter, like children's Easter, you know, those are the ancient things. The bunny, the egg, the colored eggs, the colors, the spring colors, the Easter egg hunt, all that is ancient.
This is Mark Zapytowski talking about ancient ritual, right?
Yeah, sure, yeah. Related to the agricultural year, too. Yeah. Now, the reason I started was that Mark and Gerard, my landlords, wanted me to be their pagan priest, and they told me, I said, well, what gods do you want to celebrate? And they said, well, we're English and German. And so I said, English and German. So that's when I started investigating the Germanic gods, the Norse gods. I really hadn't done that before, and so, but then it kind of stuck, and Easter is now implanted upon this land, I think.
In the United States, like, the eggs, we don't have that celebration in Mexico. We don't...
They do in Russia, in Poland, in Germany.
That's pretty European tradition, right?
Yeah. So Poland, Russia, Scandinavia, and maybe Ukraine, and the British Isles, and the United States is where you find it. So it's Northern European.
Like in Mexico, Easter is celebrated in a different way. It's more.
And they call it Pascal. It's called by a different word. This is something interesting. In order to make the English become Christian, the Pope in Rome told his missionary to the English people to let them have their pagan festival in all of its, fun things, for people and especially children that they love to do because they just loved their festival with the eggs and the colors and all that stuff, and the bunnies, the Easter bunny. So they were able to have this Easter mythology continued, but call it somehow having something to do with Jesus dying on the cross. And it worked because they didn't try to oppress the festival in its traditional
to
forms.
Incorporate to the Catholic festivity, right?
Because they did it in a soft way, it helped them to convert the English people that they didn't obliterate the festival of Easter. And they kept the name. They kept the name of their goddess. And so the people who knew what it was always knew what it was.
Easter?
Easter was the goddess. They didn't change the name, but somehow Easter became Jesus dying and rising, from the dead. But it still was Easter. In the rest of Europe, there was nothing, it didn't do that. There was no Easter. It was called Pascal, whatever that means. I don't know.
Well, in Mexico, it's like the Catholic Church is very like a somber celebration, like the Passion of Christ.
Right. It's awful.
Semana Santa is called.
I think it's kind of.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of.
Saint Week.
All of that crucifixion and blood and whipping and everything is pretty horrible, but.
But the Aztecs have a different celebration, Mark.
Is it more Easter-like? More fun?
Yeah, it was more fun. People used to travel to see their family. Well, still, it's the most popular time to travel in Mexico. people go to the resorts like Acapulco, Puerto Vallarta. It's more fun for the Aztecs, for the Mexicans, you know. I say Aztecs because I'm from Mexico City, but
You're Chilango.
so it's more it's more fun, you know. Easter for Mexicans. Of course, some people that celebrate according to the Catholic Church,
More
but
somberly.
most of Mexicans spend this time like having fun, you know, going on vacation, and because sometimes it's the only week they got off the whole year from work. So it's a fun celebration for many people. Not now because the coronavirus, but
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Sometime next year, maybe we will have festivals again if I'm still living here. Um, but
so you use eggs, put milk, pour milk, and
well, the first furrow is according to this monk who was writing in like 1780 or 1790.
farro.
780 or 790. Furrow is when you make a shallow trench with your plow,
Okay.
or in my case, a hoe, and then you put the seed in a line, and then what traditionally was done according to bede, or bead, was that you put in, okay, the seed is in, then you get the last of the bread that was from the previous year's harvest, the very last moldy bread, and you put it in, and then you pour milk, and then you pour beer, and then you close the furrow, and it's planted, and then you go, Easter, no, you go Eartha, Eartha, Eartha to the east, and the sun rises, and it's a miracle, and you know, like the Aztecs. Unless we do
With
this-
Chilopostli.
Unless we do this, we don't know that Easter will arise. Easter is the sun, the spring sun. Also Freya. Freya is a more mature, since they're both sun goddesses, I'm going to say that Easter is the young Freya. And there's two different Freyas. There's Easter, spring goddess. There's Freya, who is like Woden's consort. It's his other wife, so it's his mistress. And she's like kind of a young, wild sun goddess. And then there's Frigga, who is a sometimes angry sun goddess who is Woden's wife, and they have a bunch of kids. So there's like three, so she's a triple goddess, you could say. Different stages of her life, I suppose.
So you made the trench and pour seeds, pour milk too,
And beer,
beer too.
yes.
What else?
And then you close it with the hoe.
And then you put eggs, right? Too.
No, the eggs are part of a game. So eggs get broken on the fields. I mean, all I know is that Beta said they had games of tossing
This
eggs.
is your own celebration, Mark, right? We're talking about your celebration, right?
Both. I mean, I'm talking about the whole thing with first furrow. That's from this monk writing a long time ago, explaining
The celebration.
about Easter and what they did. And then he said they had games involving eggs. I'm going to assume colored eggs, but I don't know for sure. But, you know, the colors, the bunnies, and he didn't mention anything about bunnies per se. But somehow bunnies got in there, and certainly colored eggs. But eggs for sure were always part of that, absolutely. And so they would throw eggs. I mean, he said they would throw eggs. They'd play like games with eggs. So I imagine they're throwing eggs and you try not to have them break, or maybe you throw them at a target or whatever. So that's what we do here. We throw them at targets and we fertilize the field with holy eggs dedicated to Easter. So it's an Easter sacrifice and a game. And the person who wins the game gets Easter's totem animal. Maybe he said this, that her animal was the rabbit. I'm not sure, but I don't recall. But you may well have. Somehow, she does seem to be associated with the rabbit.
Fertility, right?
Fertility, right? The egg, and the rabbit, a very prolific, very fertile animal, makes a lot of babies.
That's also like a very European tradition, Mark. Like in Mexico, there is no reference to rabbits on Easter. But
well, Mexico is largely an indigenous country, and Spain, the other aspect of Mexico in its past, Spain is an extremely Catholic conservative country where pagan things were probably brutally wiped out early on.
but not in Mexico, Mark, but because
But not in Mexico, but in Spain. So if Easter ever existed in Spain with the Goths, with the Visigoths long ago, when they established Spain, after the Romans had already established Spain, it didn't survive. It didn't survive the Catholic Church, is what I'm saying. I mean, even if they had it, and they may well have, I don't know. Spain is, until recently, a country that would be very unfriendly to paganism.
but you had to think about also the Muslims were there, Mark.
That's true, and they were very unfriendly to paganism too. Extremely so.
But in Mexico was different because they knew that Mexicans won't accept Catholicism like just right away, you know. I mean,
It's
they
true.
like after like hundreds of years, Mexicans still celebrate like the pagan parties and like.
Mexico is a case that is similar to the English case where the Catholic Church decided to do a melding.
Incorporate, right?
Yes,
Syncretism.
to syncretism, right? To incorporate the feeling tone of at least, if not even the spirits of the previous religion.
I hope I don't offend anybody, but I mean, like most of the Mexican celebrations are very pagan celebrations, you know. Like, I mean, they're like a mix of Catholicism and Mexican celebrations, like Virgin of Guadalupe. She was tonantzing, right?
Well, you find that in individual saints throughout much of Europe, you know, even Southern Europe, like Spain. You'll find that when you go down to the level of individual saints and individual places where churches are, that these were originally pagan personalities, or gods, is what I'm saying, who became saints in the Catholic Church. So it's kind of similar to what we were just talking about with Mexico or with England.
Like Tonantzin was the goddess. She was adored in the hill of Tepeyac, Cerro del Tepeyac. You know, there were like already celebrations in this place. So when the Catholic Church say, well, we are not going to impose our religion in the Aztecs, yeah, right, in Mexico City. So what are we going to do? Because I think Tonantzin was popular in the whole Mexico, you know, the whole region already.
Well, she's the goddess of the asteroids, at least, right?
Yes. So they invented this story about Juan Diego, you know, like Juan Diego, the Virgin of Guadalupe,
So she's
Tonantzin appears to Juan Diego, right?
so she's Mary, but she's not Mary. She's Mary, but she's somehow a Mexican Mary. It's what the Catholic
Yeah,
Church
she's
seems to be saying.
a Mexican
She's like
virgin.
She's a miracle Mary that's part Mexican.
And she's brown.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
You know, that's the most
She's
amazing
an Aztec
thing, right?
Mary. Yeah.
She's an Aztec goddess that becomes an Aztec Mexican virgin.
The Virgin Mary, but she's also an older goddess. Right.
And so the place where Tonantzin was revered is now where the Virgin of Guadalupe is revered now. And so it was a big success, you know. Suddenly,
I will say this about
without offending anybody, of course, these are
without
just facts, right?
attempting not to offend anybody, but maybe I will. The Catholic Church has done some nasty things, of course. I mean, it hasn't been a perfect thing, but in its spread and in its evolution and in the way that it incorporated, you know, in a syncretistic way, as you said, earlier forms and beliefs and spirits, it was softer and more humane than later Protestantism, which was extreme and tended to be more brutal, I think. I mean, there's been plenty of Catholic brutality, but I think that the most brutal forms of conversion that I can think of have actually been Protestant events.
It's like the Three Kings celebration. That was a way to evangelize the Mexicans, you know, like
How is that?
the priests in Mexico, they start this theater representation.
The corrida of the Three Kings or whatever.
Yeah, the Three Kings, you know, like on theater, you know,
With music and things.
with theater.
Okay, theater.
You know, the pastors coming to adore the little Jesus and
And then people
The
sing a
kings-
story song, right?
the kings. I don't have the details exactly if
I
there
think
was
they
music or.
sing, this is one of the versions of the word corrida, is that people would sing a corrida about
Oh,
Jesus,
corridos. No, Mark. No, this
the
is
Three
different.
Kings and stuff.
Corridos are from the revolution. This is different. This is
Well,
this is when the priests from Spain came to Mexico. You know, and they say, "Wow, Jesus and the Bible," and the Mexicans were like, "What are you talking about? This is
they would present a story, probably with music too.
this is
Little theater, right?
yes."
Right, of course.
And then so people who didn't Mexicans didn't speak Spanish, of course, but through this theater representation, maybe without words, just like people moving in the stage and trying to tell you story as
Well,
characters.
the priest may have had a Nawa speaker with him.
Probably. And so people start understanding, you know, like, oh, wow, there was a God was born and the Three Kings come. And it's something is related to our culture because we have these kings, you know, the Grand Tlatuani, Moctezuma, They were revered by the people. The people were paying tribute to them. They were fish from Veracruz, gold from the mines from the north and on the south, silver. All the stuff was bring to the king. So somehow Mexicans were understanding Christianity, Christianism through this place, theater place.
Sure.
So this is how Mexicans became Christians, right? All right, I think that's enough for today, Mark.
Okay.
We will continue these stories through several videos. See ya.